Well, hey there. We are back. Welcome to this edition of the Rink Report. The break behind us for Four Nations. The stretch run is here. John Walton and Tarik Al-Bashir with you. And rest as a weapon, something Brooks Like used to say.
Yes.
I remember where for the Capitals, where amazingly they didn't have anybody involved with Four Nations despite being one of the very best teams in the NHL. Winnipeg had guys. Everybody but San Jose did. The Sharks aren't very good. Sorry, San Jose. But the Capitals didn't have anybody. And now they try and use that rest to their advantage as we get on to the stretch run and on toward the postseason.
Yeah, John, I know there was a lot of disappointment around here when none of the players or coaches or even, trainers, no one got picked for Four Nations. It just seemed quite odd for a team that was, for the most part, at the top of the standings looking down at everyone else. I know a lot goes into it, but there was a lot of disappointment. That said, you look at the tan faces out here,
yes,
and the guys are rested and they're hungry to get back. You know, that first practice this week had a lot of energy. You could tell the guys were excited to be around each other once again. And you look at, there are still teams that are, players who are traveling back. I mean, the Florida Panthers, they had their whole team was there, right? So all the teams that are right around the Capitals in the standings have a number of players that competed in the Four Nations. And you got to imagine at some point, whether it's next week or the week after or the week after that, it's going to catch up to them.
It's going to catch up to them, and there were a lot of injuries. There were a lot of guys that got banged up. The caliber of hockey, the best on best, out of this world.
Oh, yeah, it was
But that
fun.
comes at a physical cost, and it's a physical cost that the Washington Capitals didn't have to worry about.
Right.
And does that help them now? Does that help them in April? Does that help them when the postseason begins? We'll find out with you, but I got to believe when you see the Kachucks going around banging each other and you've got all of these different fights that happened at the beginning of the first USA-Canada, there's a lot that went into it. They took it as seriously as you could take it, and you have all of these things happening when the guys on this team or at the beach or in Mexico or wherever they were. I love that. From a Capitals perspective, I got to watch wonderful best-on-best hockey, and these guys didn't have to take the physical brunt of that.
Totally, and I got a few thoughts on that. Number one, just watching those games, those were playoff-level games, playoff-intensity games. So for the U.S. and for Canada, they went all the way to the final. Those guys are going to be a little beat up. I think about the Florida Panthers, a team that the Capitals may or may not have to go through at some point this postseason. They played a ton of games 2 years ago going to the final and losing. They played a lot of games last year going to the final and winning. And now they got their star players going through this. They didn't get a single day off. They basically left the Florida Panthers, went to their national teams, flew home the next day, and then we're right back into the fire, the cauldron of an NHL season. And I can't imagine that's going to help. And, we asked Coach Carberry about this the other day, and he actually said, I've been talking to people, and no one really knows how it's going to go. Maybe those guys come back and they're sharp, and, they're motivated and inspired by winning or losing. But something tells me they are going to be a little exhausted.
I think, to your point on Florida specifically,
so many games they've played the last 2 years.
Stanley Cup final, Four Nations, and trying to do it a third time.
Right.
Ask the Penguins in 2018 what that was like.
You run out of gas.
You run out of gas.
It's human nature. It's the laws of physics. I mean, your body just runs out of gas. And I don't think any team have more than the Florida Panthers?
No, I think they were the most.
I believe they had 8, right? And those are their best players.
Yes.
They're the guys who were already playing 19, 20, 21 minutes. And now they're going to be coming back into the season. You're going to ask them to go on another deep run. Again, who knows if the Capitals are going to see the Florida Panthers in the playoffs, but that's something to keep an eye on if you're a fan.
We're going to have Dylan Strome joining us here on the show in just a little bit as the Capitals getting back to business. We mentioned a lot about these guys going to the beach and getting rest and relaxation. Yep. One guy who, went to the beach, but it wasn't for rest and relaxation. It was to work out and get ready for the stretch run.
You went to the beach. I can see the tan on your head.
I did, yes. I got a little bit of sun there, a little bit of sun, yes.
A little bit of peeling.
And I'm here to tell you I didn't work out at all. But one guy who did was Alex Ovechkin.
Yes, he did.
In getting ready for the stretch run.
But Darius Kasparaitis, what was up with that? That was weird.
Darius is in pretty good shape.
He looked jacked.
Yeah, so I think that was probably a good move, good place to go. Alex taking this very seriously, and I think that's probably for a couple of fronts. Obviously, 895 is a part of that. But part of it is realizing the opportunity that the Capitals are a legitimate Stanley Cup contender. He had 6 weeks off where he was catching a moving train, trying to get himself back into shape after missing that amount of time at 39 years old and taking it seriously during the break and saying, look, I can do this in South Beach, but we're working out. I thought he looked great. His first media avail, when he was back talking with the media here, the first day back here at MetStar, I thought he looked outstanding. I think he's ready to go.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I watched him pretty closely in that first practice. Look, I don't want to put a lot of stock into a practice, especially for a 39-year-old.
We're talking about practice.
This is his 10,000th NHL practice, right? That said, he looked incredibly sharp. He stood out to me. Very, very rarely do guys stand out to me in practice. Ovi, in that first practice back, he stood out to me. And you're right. I think he got the best of both worlds. He went to his home down in South Florida, got to get some sun and get a little relaxation in with his family, but he also got to work. And that's something that Carberry went out of his way to point out was, he could have gone to Dubai. He could have gone to the Dominican. He could have gone to Jamaica. He could have gone anywhere. He went to his other home. He got with an old friend in Darius Kasparaitis. And he worked out, and he got on the ice. That told Carberry that mentally he was still engaged. That was on I need to take some time off. He already had 6 weeks off. Yeah. That was hey, I wasn't where I wanted to be when I came back. Here's my chance to catch up to everyone who is relaxing right now. So, 16 goals to go. You know what's funny? This morning I looked up, John, last 27 games. How many goals do you think Ovi scored?
He had a lot. 18?
15.
Oh,
so he's going to be right on it. He's going to be right on it.
He's going to be right there.
Yeah.
Dylan Strome, a very strong first half into the second half of the season, and a guy who probably will be running alongside number 8, you would think. There's been a lot of movement in the top 6 going into the break. But I think with what we see coming out of the break, with a rest, a relaxation, I think of where Connor McMichael was coming out of the break last year, where he was pretty quiet going into it. He was pretty loud coming out of it.
Right.
And I think for a guy like him, Protas, who's been pretty consistent all along, the guy is in the top 6 that, let's be honest, they'd run a little – it was hot and cold, to say the least, and there was a lot of movement around. 5-on-5 chances were sporadic. They weren't gone, but it wasn't the October, November. It was a lot of good defense, a lot of good goaltending, just enough offense. You'd like to see some of those offensive chances start to materialize again and get the top 6 feeling good about themselves as we get to the month of March, and incredibly 2 weeks now from the trade deadline.
John, I agree with everything you said, but we know this league gets harder every 20 games. Teams start to tighten up. I think what we saw there in those, let's say, 15 games before the Four Nations break were teams that were on the bubble going, hey, we better start getting our game in order. These points are so important. And you saw that level of intensity come up. And that level of intensity comes up, and I think you saw the Caps goal scoring go down. I think some of it was the fact they were getting defended a little bit harder. And we've talked about this a number of times on this show. I mean, when you're the number 1 team by points percentage or the number 1 team overall, you are everyone's mark. I mean, they put a circle and an X on your on.
And no one was really looking at you that way in October and November.
Exactly. So I think there was a little bit of the guys running dry, but I think they were getting defended a little bit harder. And the fact that they were still able to eke out those points while being everyone's target, while playing in an environment where the intensity level has come up, I think that bodes really well for this team going forward.
On the stretch run, on the chase for 895, and he may be very well involved in it if it gets down to the end of the season. Our chat from earlier with Dylan Strome. Well, Dylan, thanks for joining us here as you guys come out of the break and getting ready for the stretch run here. But first of all, how much fun did you have on the break, and are you rested and ready to go here?
Yeah, it was awesome. The family and I went to Bahamas, stayed at a nice place, and got some sun and some much needed relaxation. Although with a 1 and a 3-year-old, there's only so much sun and relaxation. My relaxation was from like 7 till whenever I went to bed. So as soon as they went to bed, it was a little bit more relaxing for myself and my wife. So that was good.
So Dylan, I know there was a lot of disappointment when no players got selected for their national teams, but in retrospect, you guys all came back with smiles and tans. You're happy to be around each other again. Do you think maybe it was a good thing for this team?
Yeah, I think it's maybe a little bit of a blessing in disguise. I think I definitely think that some guys on our team were deserving of going. I think I don't know how anyone. Yeah, well, maybe not me, but I don't know how anyone could argue that Tom Wilson wouldn't have been a nice X factor in that Canada-U.S. game. So we'll see what happens tonight. But I don't think, it might have been tough for him to find a dance partner that night, but, he's a heck of a hockey player, and I wish he was in that game. I watched it start to finish, and how about that start?
I haven't seen anything like that in the NHL in, 10 years? Or maybe the last time you guys played the Rangers a few years ago?
During COVID, and the Ranger game was...
Ryan Strome took a fight in that one.
Yes, he did.
It's crazy that the two hockey games people remember in the last 10 years are just the ones that there's like 5 fights in. So maybe there's something to that.
Yeah, most definitely. How much, just maybe drilling down a little bit on that mental and physical relaxation of being able to step away so that when you come back to the game, I mean, there's the physical, you're going to heal, but just mentally to have that time. I know Spencer Carberry talking about that before. He's like he didn't want you guys even thinking about hockey. Just go away, do your thing, and come back ready to go. Yeah,
I mean, we've played, 55 games so far, so I think, you're pretty much playing every second night or every third night. Even our Christmas break, you only get 3 days. So it's not like you have a ton of time to, step away from the game and not think about it too much. It's funny that now that we step away from the game, there's the coolest hockey tournament on of all time. So, no, but I mean, it was nice to watch and kind of just sit back as a fan. I know McMichael and I were on vacation together. We watched it in the sports book that was at the hotel we were staying at, and just the passion that people felt. I don't even really care about hockey.
Yeah.
That just I think when you get your country's logo on a jersey, it just means a little bit more, and it was cool to watch. But for the most part, and other than a few nights, it was nice to just get a break and relax, and like you said, not really think about hockey. Kind of just focus on being with your family and how much we travel. It's nice to be with them for a consistent amount of time, and just enjoying yourself and not worrying about too much.
So 16 goals to go for Alex Ovechkin. I went back and I looked at his last 27 games last year. He scored 15 goals, so he's going to be right on it. I'm going to make it short and sweet. Is he going to break it this year, Dylan?
Being his center, I would like to say yes. That would be nice. No, I think it's going to be it's going to be right down to the wire. I was just kind of saying to someone, we were talking to the media in the room, and I was kind of just saying, it would be nice if we had 80 games left and there wasn't a deadline on it. But I mean, maybe he has a flair for the dramatic, and he has a way of going about his business, and I know that anyone that's watched him for a long time knows they're not going to be shocked, if and when he does it this year.
You have been, for the most part, his centerman this season. Do you think about what that moment might be like?
Yeah, I definitely thought about it. I think just getting to witness it is going to be cool. Of course, you might think about it maybe a couple years down the road that who got the assist on the goal, but I feel like even just being on his team or being on the ice, of course. Who's going to get the puck right away? There's
I'm pretty sure Ovi's going to take that.
No, I know, but I'm sure he's going to be worried about celebrating. So I mean, weird things can happen. Yeah, yeah, I know. So there's so many things to think about, but hopefully he goes on a nice little run here, and he can do it with 6, 7, 8 games left, so it's not right down to the wire. Because I've definitely thought about it's going to be weird. There's no way around it. You're going to break the all-time goals record, and I'm sure the goalie doesn't want to have it happen, but it's if you get a 2-on-0 and there's he's got 1 goal left to break the record. The goalie might just stay on. He might just literally give you the open net and just stay on. So it's, and then you're going to be the guy that shot it. And what if he doesn't get it this year? You know what I mean?
What if it's an empty net?
I don't think he'll go out for the empty net.
I remember 802. Didn't he try to pass it to Kuzi?
Yeah.
Kuzi kept passing it.
He kept giving it back to him.
Yeah. I don't think he'd go out. I don't think anyone. I'm not going to speak for him. But I'm sure everyone would like to see him break.
I'm just picturing over your fireplace one day, he's lining up for the shot, and it's just a picture of you just getting him the pass.
Yeah, I mean that's what I guess what some people would dream about as a kid. But no, it's there's lots of pictures. There's going to be a picture. I could tell my grandkids that this was the there wasn't a certain assist on a different goal that might have been the record breaker. So no, it's all good. I mean, I definitely thought about it. And I don't think you're human if you haven't thought about it.
So you're having a great season. A lot of your teammates are having a great season. The team in general is having a great season. What are some of the collective goals these last 27 games?
I think just kind of keep what we've been doing. Carbs has us pretty dialed into each team that we play on a nightly basis, so where we're really focused on that team and that one game, and you're not thinking too far ahead or thinking about who you play next week or if you have a back-to-back, kind of just worrying about your next shift, who you're playing against. And so I feel like that's kind of our mindset. I definitely think it's not going to be as intense as there was last coming out of the break last year, where every game felt like there was multiple games where we felt like if we lost the game, we were done. And we would find a way to, get a point or whatever and be like, well, we might still be in it. And so I definitely think it's going to be a lot easier, mentally this year going into the last stretch. But at the same time, you definitely don't want to, have a lull at this time of the year. Right. So, knock on wood, we haven't, had, a big lull. We've kind of had a couple games where we've been, a little slower, but I feel like for the most part we've been pretty consistent, and that's what we want the rest of the way.
Well, Dylan, get back at it with Pittsburgh. Edmonton coming up this weekend. Appreciate you taking a few minutes to join us up here. Thank you.
No problem. Thanks guys.
Man.
Appreciate the time from Dylan Strome as the Capitals really at home here for a while. You got a game in Pittsburgh on Saturday. You've got Connor McDavid and the Oilers here on Sunday, so that's quite a way to get back into it. And for Dylan to be matched up with those guys right off the jump, McDavid and Crosby. But then, as you get into it, you've got a lot of home games coming up. But 7 of the next 9 that are going to be at 7th and F. Really like the fact that, with the exception of this weekend, that's the only back-to-back. They're spread out pretty well. Not a lot of tough travel. Chance to pile up some points and try and solidify your case for trying to, at the very least, win the Metropolitan Division, if not the Eastern Conference and the President's Trophy.
Yeah, John, so they're coming off the Four Nations break with a robust 10-point lead over Carolina in the Metro. I mean, I'm not going to say that's insurmountable because it's not, but it's going to be pretty tough for anybody to catch the Caps there. I mean, they're still – everything's right in front of the Caps here. They can clinch the division. They could even win their 4th President's Trophy. I mean, I know we don't want to talk about the President's Trophy and, the curse that kind of goes
We'll save that for another show, but that worries me not. I would rather them finish strong.
You want to win everything you can win. And you know what? That'd be a nice feather in their cap to remember this season, this regular season by. Like I said, it'd be their 4th. As a franchise. It'd be their first since back-to-back, right, 16, 17. Yep. That'd be pretty cool there. So, if we want to take a kind of a big-picture view of the remaining 27 games, I love tankathon.com. Do you ever go to tankathon.com?
I do not.
It's actually really useful when your team stinks because you can kind of see, like, okay, where are we going to be drafting? The Capitals actually have the 28th schedule in terms of strength of schedule for the remainder of the season. So, they have a pretty easy run the rest of the way. So, like I said, it's all right in front of them. The most important thing, stay healthy and just make sure your game is in order going into the playoffs. And you know what? And it'd be okay if number 8 went and did his thing. But, as we said earlier, it's going to be tight.
Make all of those things happen, and what a stretch run this would be. Certainly memorable for a lot of different reasons. Capitals and the rest of the NHL have 2 weeks to figure out what they want to do for the trade deadline. And for the Caps, we've talked about the third line and augmenting that, anything that can maybe help out the power play a little bit. And that probably dovetails with the third line. So on defense, you're probably okay. But as far as the forwards, there are some targets that this team's probably looking at to maybe improve there to try and solidify themselves once they get to game 1.
Yeah, I think, number 1, you got to walk a fine line if you're Chris Patrick and Brian McClellan, right? You got a team that's playing great, that has chemistry in the room. Everyone kind of has a role, has found their fit, and things are going well. You and I have covered this team for a long time, and there have been occasions in the past where they've tinkered too much with a good team, and things kind of go sideways. Now, all of a sudden, someone that is very popular in the room isn't playing as much or isn't playing at all, and, that can cause issues. So you have to kind of figure out, how much do you need? And so the other way I look at it is, okay, let's say they decided we're going to go out and do something because the teams around them have gotten better, right? The Rangers got Miller, Carolina got Rantanen, and the teams right there improved. You might want to do something. Do you want to go kind of on the small end and maybe bulletproof yourself against injury in the bottom 6 and just go get a winger? Or do you want to go big time, break the bank? All right, guys, it's all in. Here's our chips. We're pushing them to the middle of the table. Here's maybe our best/last chance to win something during the Ovi era and just go get a big-name third-line or second-line center and, hope that it works out.
I think both of those are surgical in nature because of the way this roster is comprised and all of the different guys that – we've heard nothing but chemistry from every guy we've had on this show all season long, and you don't necessarily want to mess with that, I think. Right. So the surgical part is – that doesn't mean that this one little piece isn't a big piece that gets plugged into maybe somewhere on the third line, and that's fine. But I think whatever it is, that's probably
and don't forget, Ryan Leonard's going to be here in a little bit too, most likely, right?
He is, and that's a third-line piece. And, again, that's an addition, and the guys certainly know him. I wonder on timing for Leonard, and I think that's kind of an interesting thing. Boston College is good, and Frozen 4, you're well into April. You're not really playing any regular season games. Now, Matthew Nyes did that with Toronto
I was
a couple of years
Matthew Nyes
ago.
is a
It's
great
not
example.
impossible.
Yeah.
But it is a big ask, I think, to be able to say congrats.
Have you
You're about to
watched
make
any of his games.
He's
at BC?
amazing. He is amazing.
The dude has
I think
25
he can do it.
goals.
Yes,
He's
don't
leading
know
the league, leading the NCAA in goals.
To that point, I don't know that it matters that it's game one of a first-round playoff matchup and he's making his NHL debut. And not to wish ill on Boston College, but I think the sooner he's here, the better. But I think he is going to be here, and that's certainly part of the math when you're talking about the third line.
And another thing, I mean, if you're counting on him coming in and being a player, and remember, players like Ryan Leonard, 8th overall pick, doesn't have to sign. He's got a little leverage too, right? He can be like, okay, I'll come in if you can tell me I'm going to play. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but he's got a little leverage. So what if Ryan, you sign with us, you're going to play. Well, now you got to make space for him at the deadline, which is a full month before he's done with BC. It's not as easy as we're kind of making it out to be. There's a lot of moving parts. If I were running the team,
there's a scary thought.
If I were the general manager, I'd go big.
Go big?
This team feels like it has something special. This is an opportunity to win another Stanley Cup. I'm not saying I'd move the first-round pick, but I'd be aggressive.
There's a deal to be there. Be aggressive.
Yeah.
All right, before we go, one prediction for the stretch run.
Okay.
What do you think?
Ovi breaks Gretzky's record in the finale against Sidney Crosby and the Penguins.
Whoa. I mean, the timing would be incredible.
Incredible.
The
only thing that worries me about that is what if that's a little bit of a air out of the balloon, and then you also can't really celebrate it a ton because the playoffs are 2 days later. But I know Ovi just wants to get this done. And something tells me he's gonna find a way, come hell or high water, to get 16 goals in these last 27 games.
I boldly predict that Connor McMichael is going to have a big finish to this season. It's been quiet for him. Goals here and there, but not a lot. Really going back to December. But I'm going to use last year as a guide where he got the rest. He came back and he was as good as he was all season. I thought, coming out of the All-Star break last year. I think he has a big finish.
One thing about guys like McMichael, and it hasn't happened as much with Protas, but a guy like McMichael, he bursts on the scene. He has this great start. I wonder if other teams are defending him a little bit harder.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, he's no longer a surprise. It's no longer like, hey, let's focus on that guy. He's not now a guy who's getting the matchups and getting, more of the focal point of opposing teams.
Appreciate Dylan Strome joining us. Capitals going to face Pittsburgh in the Berg to start it out of the break. And then the Edmonton Oilers coming into town for a matinee on Sunday. We are back. We are glad you are too. Thanks for tuning in to this edition of the Rink Report.